Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to First Impressions, the power of an effective response system. I'm Jill Marshall-May, Director of the National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment at Adopt U.S. Kids. The NRCDR is excited to offer this webinar today. We will discuss the importance of planning, implementing, and continuously assessing your system for responding to resource family inquiries as an integral component of your diligent recruitment process. Your response offers your jurisdiction a critical opportunity to set resource family expectations and provide consistent, timely information. We know that how we respond, develop, and support families is key to having a pool of foster and adoptive families. Having a large enough pool of well-prepared families begins at first inquiry. Each step of the process should be increasing the family's ability to meet the needs of children in foster care. Today, we're going to discuss strategies to respond to, develop, and support families through the licensure or certification process. You will hear from 4 jurisdictions who have unique approaches to their response systems. While we recognize that each state, tribe, or territory is different, we hope that you can take parts of each jurisdiction's lessons learned to improve and enhance your response to families. In talking with a virtual panel of presenters, we are taking a little bit different approach to this webinar, and we hope you will find it engaging and helpful. We continuously try to improve how we provide information and hope that you will take the short survey at the end to tell us how we're doing and whether this new approach was successful. Before we dive into today's presentation, we want to go over just a few housekeeping details for this webinar. This webinar is 1.5 hours long with time at the end for presenters to respond to your questions. We will record this webinar and archive the audio and PowerPoint presentation on our website at nrcdr.org. The PowerPoint will include links to the resources mentioned during the webinar. For this webinar, we have muted your lines, but we do want to hear from you, and we hope that this webinar will be interactive and responsive to your questions. We will ask poll questions during the webinar and ask for your responses. If you're on Twitter, we encourage you to tweet about the webinar using the hashtag NRCDR that you'll see in the lower right corner of each slide. We'll provide a few sample tweets in the chat bar at various points during the webinar. We've really come a long way in technology, haven't we? On the next slide, we'll show you how you can use the chat feature to ask us questions. At the end of the webinar, a brief evaluation form will pop up on your screen. Please stay on to complete the evaluation questions so that we can use your feedback to inform future webinars. On the next screen, although your lines are muted during the webinar, you can submit questions and let us know if you need help. As you can see in this screenshot, you can use the raise hand feature to let us know if you need assistance. You can also use the chat feature to submit questions throughout the webinar. We will collect the questions you should submit and answer as many of them as possible at the end of the webinar. You can also use the chat feature to let us know if you're having any technical difficulties. Our support team will respond to help you resolve them. We are also providing some troubleshooting tips in the chat window. All right, so let's briefly review the agenda for our webinar and then get started on the presentation. Today you'll hear from Marie Young-Peter, who will talk about the key qualities of an effective response system, and then you'll also hear from our panel, Gilbert Soto from New Jersey, Renee Fitz from New Mexico, Teddy Charbonneau from the Cherokee Nation, and Heidi Robinault from Michigan Adoption Resource Exchange. We'll also highlight ideas from the field, talk about key takeaways from the webinar. We'll highlight some resources from the NRCDR and Adopt U.S. Kids, and then have our question and answer period and closing remarks. Now I'd like to hand it over to Marie, who's going to get the webinar started. Marie?
Thank you, Jill. Well, good afternoon to everyone who's on the webinar. I'm excited to be part of this very important look at how states are doing their response systems and hopefully provide some ideas that will validate what you're already doing or give you some new ideas to consider as you enhance your response system. As Jill mentioned, I'm Marie Young-Peter, a consultant with the National Resource Center, and actually work with jurisdictions around each of these stages on this slide here. So let's first start off by addressing what do we mean by response system. We're talking about processes and practices for engaging, developing, and supporting families from that very first point of initial inquiry all the way through the licensing process and into placement. As I mentioned, this slide shows the different stages of the process, and though we know that there are maybe some additional parts to the process, we're going to talk a little bit about those listed here on this slide. They're all interconnected, so it's important for those who have responsibility for the different steps in the process to have opportunities to connect their work and to communicate consistently with each other. A response system's readiness really impacts your recruitment and retention outcomes. If the agency recruits families but does not have a system in place to respond, or the process is confusing, families are more likely to drop out of the process. A response system that both staff and families experience as efficient and supportive can have a positive impact on your future recruitment and, more importantly, on the outcomes for the children. There are many different approaches to response systems, really shaped by the unique differences in the state, including your agency structure, the resources that you may have available to your agency, the community context, and as well as your data, which shows what your families are really needing in order to move through the process smoothly and to be able to care for those children. Regardless of how your system is structured, it really should reflect a shared understanding of the agency's goals and needs and the expectations around how you want to work with families. Ideally, a response system can both anticipate and respond to changes to meet the needs of children, youth, and families. And this can really be guided by your data and any feedback that you seek to get. So we're going to move to try to find out a little bit about those on the line, the way they have their system structured. So we'd like for you to do this poll. We hear that polls are a big part of our webinars and our enjoy. So how is your response system structured? You'll see several choices here, and because we know that they're all different and some of them use more than one structure, we'd like for you to check as many as apply to your system. So we'll take a minute for you to do the poll and wait for the results. I'm not seeing the results on my screen. Okay, there it goes. Okay, and as we suspected, there's various structures to how your system operates. And we're going to hear in a little bit from some jurisdictions that how theirs are different as well. And you'll hear some of the strategies that they've used for their system. Great, thank you. The experiences of families are really impacted by the key qualities on this particular slide. I'm going to talk just briefly about each of them, and then we'll go into the panel, which is really what we know you want to hear, and to hear how they've actually woven in some of the qualities into their response system. At the end of the webinar, we'll be providing you with some links, as Jill had mentioned, to resources that can help you in your work. This next slide is on engaging in a response system that is accessible. A response system can really be engaging for families by being welcoming and supportive and making sure that there's clear and regular communication, as well as a high quality of customer service throughout the process. For example, staff who are responding to families can be prepared to provide that clear and accurate information to families about what your system's needs are, the requirements that you expect in your system and the steps in your process, as well as the support that you have available for families. At the same time, the same responding staff can be assessing the families and actually also be helping them to assess themselves as to whether or not they're ready to foster or adopt. You'll want to be thinking about and considering strategies for how to provide consistent and informative communication. And some of the things that we actually see, something as simple as developing shared talking points for staff who respond to families. That way they'll have information that is consistent, and your messaging will be consistent. Another strategy that we've seen in states is cross-training. Cross-training staff can help prepare them to also respond to questions at the different stages of the process, and therefore, will create more consistency in the messaging. Another important consideration is the accessibility. To support families in participating in information sessions or your orientations and even your trainings, the opportunities that are being offered should really be offered at times and places that are convenient to the family. You might want to partner with your faith-based groups or your community organizations, and even your private agencies that you work with, who can help you to offer sessions at a variety of times and at locations. These partnerships can help you to be able to offer more sessions and have them in the evenings or on weekends, and actually even in locations where you're targeting your recruitment, which in turn can help you prevent delays and allow for families to catch up when they need to. Some agencies we even see offer training cycles that families can enter at any point, which can help keep families moving through the process. So consistent messaging. Consistent messaging as a quality of your response system really helps to ensure that staff and partners and your families have a shared understanding of what your agency's values and beliefs are in working with children and families. Delivering consistent messaging can help prospective resource families develop realistic expectations and to understand what their role is, which we know can lead to stronger and more stable relationships between the agency and families. Data can inform your messaging about the needs of children and youth in care, as well as the types of homes needed, such as homes for teens or maybe for siblings. It's important to look at providing consistent messaging throughout the process and aligning your practice with your messaging. For instance, when your agency makes efforts to recruit in targeted communities, such as maybe recruiting lesbian or gay, bisexual, or transgender families, it's important to also look at your response system to see if you're messaging to that population. For instance, does your website and your paperwork use inclusive language or use pictures, images that are reflective of the community, of the population that you're recruiting for? Are there examples of LGBT families in your training? Would be one thing to consider. So collecting data on children and families, as well as around the steps in the process, can really help to inform your response system. You'd be able to use that data to align the goals of different parts of your system, for instance, ensuring consistent recruitment and response messaging around specific needs, such as with older youth, and then turn around and provide training and support to help families who care for older youth. Establishing feedback loops for staff, families, your community, and your private providers who work with you can really help provide a clear understanding of how your system is doing. It can help you to know where is the system working well, as well as the challenges that families may be experiencing going through the process. It is helpful to have a database or a system for tracking data on families. One of the things we know, we have pretty good data on children, but not so much on families. So having a tracking system that captures data on the family is important to know where your families are. And we're going to hear from some of our panel presenters who will discuss how they have used the tracking system. There are many additional ways to gather information about your response system. And so this slide actually is another poll that we're going to do because we want to know, how are you in your agency gathering information to determine your functioning? There's several, options here, and we'd like for you to choose as many of those as applies to your work. So I'm seeing that surveys is a big resource used. One of the things I see that we have other, and we hope to be able to learn more about what those other things are. So if you want to enter those into the chat, that would be great, or we can have some future conversation around that. So family survey seems to be a big one. Great, that's 66%. Okay, I think we can close that poll. Great, thank you. So this last slide on development and support is the last key quality in an effective response system that I want to make sure that we cover. Development and support really begins at the time of the initial inquiry and should continue throughout the resource parent's involvement with the system. We know that it also evolves as needs are identified as well. We're really trying to encourage the field to shift their thinking about retention as previously being something passive or later stage of a family's involvement with the system, toward really thinking about it being actively developing and supporting families from the very beginning. This will help them stay engaged and be able to meet the needs of the children and youth in care. We know many systems are working on this, and we're going to hear in a minute from Gilbert from the state of New Jersey, who's going to talk a little bit about their approach next. All families, we know, have development and support needs. And what we also know is that those needs are likely to increase once the child is actually placed in the home. So we want to make sure that the response system has a development and support component. Just like with families, staff working with child welfare systems also have needs for development and support. Development and support really is a parallel process. Are we on the slide? Okay. It's a parallel process, and what do I mean by that is that when staff are developed and supported in their roles in working with families, they're better prepared to respond and develop and support the families. And you really want to have an understanding of what those needs are for both staff and families. You can use data to identify the development and support needs of both families and your staff. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jill, and she's going to introduce our panel. We'll also have some question and answers at the end. So feel free to use the chat room or to offer your questions when we get there. Jill?
Thanks, Marie. We're now going to move into our presenter panel, as Marie suggested. But before we do, as the poll question showed, your response systems are structured in many different ways. And we also know that the size of your system, the geographic context, and a variety of other factors impact your approach to responding to families. We hope that you will consider how you can take the information and lessons learned that each presenter shares and apply it to your work. So I've always wanted to be a talk show host, so this is my grand opportunity here. I'm going to start off by talking to Gilbert Soto, who's the Supervising Program Support Specialist with the Office of Resource Families, New Jersey Division of Child Protection and Permanency. So welcome, Gilbert, and thank you for joining us today. Gilbert, can you start off by, yeah, thanks. Can you start off by just telling us a little bit about your child welfare system and how your response system is structured?
Sure. So our agency is state administered. We do have local offices within each one of our counties. Depending on the size of the county, we may have more offices at the local level, but we are state administered. We have approximately 6,500 employees within our department, And as far as our response system, when it comes to inquiries, we actually we receive inquiries via hotline, the internet, and through informal contacts, face-to-face during recruitment events and families referring other families, and we reach out to those families. And all of our inquiries are distributed via a central location on a daily basis to all of our recruiters. All of our recruiters are based locally in each one of the counties. We actually oversee from central office all of the recruitment activities and all the recruiters in each one of the counties. So once we do receive an inquiry, we have a very structured system. So once we do receive an inquiry, the recruiters are asked to contact prospective applicants via telephone within 5 business days, and invite them to an orientation session. If the initial attempts to contact those families is unsuccessful, then we ask that they make a second attempt at a different time of day. And if we still don't have a response within the 5 business days, then we send a letter out to the families. And if we don't hear back from the families within 30 days, then we basically dispose of the inquiry. Basically, it would sound more like they are looking for, if they were just looking for information rather than interested in moving forward. But once a family is ready to move forward, we invite them to an orientation session. They come to our session to talk about, all the different aspects and what the expectations are. And once they want to move forward, then it's assigned to one of our local resource units who go out to see the family and assess the family. And then our licensing process begins. And we actually have a home study to licensure process that is supposed to take 90 days, and it is very structured in that sense as well.
Great. Thanks, Gilbert, for painting that picture for us. How did New Jersey determine your standards for timeframes for response and licensing?
So when it came to the timeframes for response, I don't know if others know, but we are actually under a federal monitor. So in 2007, the time frame was negotiated with the federal monitors, which gave us the 150 days. So we used the SAFE model for our home studies, and we used as a guide, we used the SAFE model, and then the task that needed to be accomplished, we incorporated into the 150-day process. So it's very structured, like what needs to happen from the first day to the 7th day, from day 7 to day 30, all the way to day 150, which incorporates our resource families, our resource workers, our licensing office, and what the responsibilities are.
Great, thanks. And I just want to note that New Jersey's full timeframes are posted on the webinar event page, and this slide shows us a sample. So thank you, Gilbert, for sharing all of those with us. So, Gilbert, what are the strengths of setting these timeframes for responses?
It helps to provide structure to our staff, and it sets clear expectations of the standards that we're trying to hold ourselves to, and it sets clear expectations for the families. Like, this is what the time frames that we're trying to abide by, and the families know that, so that if something is happening, then they can call us on it. And it allows us the ability to make decisions quicker as we go through the different timelines that we have set.
And are there any challenges to meeting the timeframes?
Yes. One of the bigger challenges to the 150-day has to do with kinship families. In our system, all the families no matter if you're kin or non-kin, you go through the same process. But as, one of the bigger challenges is families who are dealing with their relatives already have a whole different approach to this. They're not quite as motivated as the non-kin families. So moving them along can prove to be a challenge. Court decisions sometimes can be challenging. They want us to license a home that just does not meet standards. And sometimes a lack of communication creates those issues, and, we try to address that the best we can.
And do you have specific strategies to address those challenges?
Yeah, we actually are working continuously to, develop ways to address some of the challenges that we face. We started by bringing all who are involved to discuss the progress or the lack of progress that's happening with the more challenging families. So we bring everybody involved, from the caseworkers, basically all the individuals that can make decisions on behalf of the child, from higher level staff, supervisory staff, down to casework staff, resource staff, DAGs, whoever we need to get involved in order to keep this family moving along. We're able to discuss barriers that are holding up the process, and, we really try to get the decision makers involved. Great,
thanks. And how does New Jersey link recruitment, response, development, and support of families?
All of our, when it comes to all these pieces, all four of those components are interconnected, because in reality, our recruitment efforts aren't effective without being able to effectively support our families through the process. So as we, recruit families, we set the standard that families need to, we need to be responsive to the families quickly, and we need to work through that process within the time frame so that it's a quick, seamless process. And on top of that, we've developed recently a plan that will further enhance our retention efforts, which go towards the supports that families are receiving.
Great, thanks. So you're almost off the hot seat. How are you collecting? How are you collecting data to inform and recruit and improve your response?
So recently we've been tracking. We've been looking at our response times by county from every step, from the time we get the inquiry, how long it's taken us to reach out to the families, when they're coming to orientations, when it's assigned to the local resource units, how long it's taking them to respond to the families. So that's all internal, and it's really done by hand by our supervisors within my office. And we also look at the total number of inquiries that we receive. We look at the number of inquiries that we receive in targeted areas. We also look at the total number of applications that we're receiving and how many of those are becoming licensed. So we look at percentages of applications of families that are becoming licensed, as well as the total number of families licensed. We look and track a whole lot of data.
Data is super important. How do you get feedback or data that helps you know when something is not working?
Well, we look at, obviously we monitor data on a monthly basis, so we're looking at how many homes are becoming licensed, what percentage of the applications are becoming licensed, if they're meeting time frames, what percentage of the applications we're receiving, what percentage of those are becoming licensed. So, some of it is month to month, other is looking at trends. So we look at data over a couple years to see, be able to compare ourselves, how we're doing now to how we were doing, let's say, a year ago, so that it really gives us a good idea of where we're currently at. And we also have case practice specialists within my office who are dispersed within the local offices. So they provide us feedback as well with any information that may not be captured like it should with the data that we have. So they're able to give us like real-time feedback on, something that may not be working.
And so just tell us a little bit about how this has changed over time and why.
Well, I think because we use a lot more data from everything that we do, that a lot of our work has become more sophisticated. With everything being so data-driven, we're able to really see like where our needs are, like where our challenges lie, and it gives us a good idea and a good picture so that we can figure out ways and different strategies on how we can address those areas of challenge. Our recruitment plans are data-driven. Our recruitment efforts are data-driven because we're able to see not only where our needs lie geographically, but we incorporated our market segmentation tools, which helps to address data-wise, like where our families are coming from and how we can best strategize to go out there in the community to reach those families. Timeliness of our home studies, it's like that's something that we're constantly tracking. So it's something that I would say, go back to 2005, 2007 and prior, we weren't tracking any of those things. So this really, really gives us a good idea of like how we need to move forward. It really does push us in the right direction.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gilbert. We really appreciate having you on today's webinar.
No problem. Thanks.
Thank you.
Glad it's
so now we're going to move.
No, I'm just playing.
Yeah. So now we're going to move on to New Mexico, and joining us today is Renee Fitz, who's the Foster Care Program Manager for the New Mexico Children, Youth, and Families Department. So welcome, Renee, and thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
Can you tell us a little bit about your child welfare system?
Sure. Our child welfare system in New Mexico is state-run with 26 county offices that serve families all over New Mexico, and we have approximately 2,500 children in care.
So I understand that you've made some changes to your response system in recent years. Why was that?
Well, for many years, New Mexico has answered our own intake calls through an 800 line. Several years ago, this phone line was handled by our regional recruiters on a rotating schedule. But we found that they weren't able to provide information if an inquiry came from outside their assigned region, so this caused delays in our response time. So after that, the 800 line was answered by our statewide central intake call center, which is also responsible for taking statewide abuse and neglect reports. So many inquiries did not receive a response as abuse and neglect reports and child safety took precedence. Additionally, our call center staff were not trained to provide general information about foster or adoptive parenting, and so there were delays in response.
So tell us a little bit about how your system works now.
Okay, well, now we have mainstreamed our inquiry process. Our 800 line is answered by one individual who is trained to respond to families' questions about foster parenting and adoption. This person also enters information about the families into our database, including the date of their inquiry, the referral source, that type of information. Families are provided general information and advised that their local recruiter will contact them within 2 business days. The name and contact information for that recruiter are also provided to the family. Our recruiters receive the assignment and family information through our database, and then the recruiter is able to provide more in-depth information about the licensing process and requirements, send an informational packet with an application, and they do that via regular mail or email based on the family's request, and they also provide them training schedules for their particular area. In addition to that, the recruiter also schedules the family to attend an information meeting or provides a one-on-one information session with the families right then and there. They make a minimum of 3 follow-up contact attempts, and they document them in the database. So we have found that this helps us to track what recruitment efforts are working and how many inquiries each county is receiving. And so it overall improves our customer service through quicker response times to inquiries. So we really felt like we wanted to focus on our response system as families were dissatisfied with our response to inquiries. So with that, we recently began dissecting this process to see if we could identify where families were dropping out of our process. So we want, obviously we want more families achieving licensure, so we have been developing a system to track and identify where and why they are withdrawing.
Great. Thanks, Renee. So it sounds like you're using data to improve your process. Capturing data is a struggle for many states. Can you tell us about what you've experienced as the benefits and challenges of implementing a data system that collects data from initial inquiry through licensure?
Certainly. Well, in New Mexico, SACLOS database system is called FACS. The benefit of having the system is that it could do a good job of tracking families once a family has turned in an application. It has a variety of fields that should be documented, such as date fingerprinting was done and dates of the training completion, and it also tracks home visits, which are all fields that can be extracted for reporting purposes. The ongoing systemic challenge is that the data is only as good as what is entered, and assigned workers aren't documenting the information completely, as these are not required fields in our current database. So the database also does not track the family from their initial point of contact, only after they are considered what we call a provider, because an application for licensure has been received. So since we have changed the process for our recruiters and navigators to follow a family recently to they are following them from inquiry to licensure, we felt it was imperative that we begin to track these families throughout the full process so that we can identify how long it takes to license a family. Our Research and Evaluation Bureau has assisted us with developing an Excel spreadsheet to monitor each inquiring family through this process. At this point, it's a manual document completed by our recruiters and our navigators on a monthly basis. It's been built to have formulas that actually count down the days for licensure and provide recommended dates when each family should be contacted. So that's a nice tool for our recruiters and navigators there as kind of as reminders. It's also helping us evaluate where we are losing families by reflecting if they withdraw after attending an information meeting or if they continue and perhaps don't show up to training day 3. We feel it serves to identify some trends. For example, if we recognize that several families did not return after, let's say, training day 2, we can contact them to inquire if it was something in our messaging at the training or was it simply a scheduling issue. And hopefully these personal conversations can provide us with opportunities to re-engage our families.
Sounds like you all have some very exciting work going on. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're supporting and developing families through your response system?
Sure. Well, with the help from the National Resource Center for Diligent Recruitment, we identified the need for an improved support system for potential families when they feel most vulnerable or overwhelmed in our process. Our regional recruiters and our contract navigators are now available on the family's terms, during non-traditional hours, at emotional times, on the weekends, those kinds of things. We find that they're staying involved with our potential families longer to support them all the way through their first placement. They provide families with resources in the community, and they develop relationships with potential families to keep them engaged in the process. Our recruiters and navigators assist them with paperwork. They provide ongoing communication about upcoming training dates. They refer them to CPR in the community and often just meet for coffee after training or to provide the family with an added personal touch and to help the family really sit down and process the information that they were receiving either at training or from other mentors that they've been connected with. Our recruiters and navigators are also available to families in a communication style they're most comfortable with. They have those conversations with them, whether what's the best point of communication, whether it's text, email, or face-to-face. We're teaming up with these families. We're also teaming them up, shall I say, with experienced foster parents for mentorship purposes, just as needed. And then they're also assisting with teaching them self-advocacy to our families when when they're just potentially dissatisfied or they have an issue or need guidance on how to address a concern. And we seem to be getting positive feedback with this style of relationship management. We find that when families attend the trainings or information meetings, they're happy to see their recruiter or navigator there to be a support, and it doesn't seem as overwhelming when they have a relationship with somebody in the room. We've had comments like, hey, there's my person, so it's been really positive.
Great. Thanks, Renee. So last question. How do web inquiries fit into your response system?
That's a great question. Web inquiries, from what we can tell right now, our data tells us that many of our inquiries are coming through our websites. Part of the way we are supporting and developing these types of families is that we are trying new ways to reach out and support them. Many times our online inquiries are less likely to respond to verbal communication, as they may just be in the research phase of determining whether foster parenting is right for them. So we're opening the lines of communication through email, text, and use of our social media outreach with these families has proven successful for us. We've been working very diligently to compile an email listserv for our web inquiring families so that we can do quality assurance with them and customer satisfaction surveys to evaluate their overall experience with our agency. We find that this also allows us to have continued follow-up with them through electronic communication, to periodically invite them to information meetings throughout the year, as well as other special events. We feel that the key is keeping them engaged and helping them feel supported, whether they are proceeding through the process at this time or if they are still evaluating whether this is the right time for them to move forward with licensure.
Thank you so much, Renee, for your time today and your participation in the webinar. I understand that your family has a big competition this weekend, and we wish you the best of luck.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the support.
So
hope to see you
now
there.
we're going to move. Okay, sounds good. So now we're going to move on to the Cherokee Nation. Hetty Charbonneau, who's the foster care program manager with the Cherokee Nation Indian Child Welfare System. I'd like to welcome Hetty. We're super appreciative of having you on our webinar today. So, Hetty, can you tell us a little bit about your tribe and your tribe's child welfare system?
Sure. OCO, we're glad to be on today on the webinar. Cherokee Nation is the largest tribe in the United States, and we're located in the northeastern part of Oklahoma. Our jurisdictional land base covers approximately 7,000 miles. It's comparable to the size of New Jersey or a little larger than Connecticut. Our Cherokee Nation Indian Child Welfare Program has a workforce of approximately 120 employees, and our department is comprised of child protection services, recruitment, certification, and placement, family protection services, tribal CAPS, state CAPS, out-of-district CAPS, eligibility, and guardianship. And CAPS is an acronym that we use for our court and permanency services workers. They're the case managers and the ones that work directly with the families and with the court systems.
Great, thanks, Hetty. How do you receive and respond to inquiries from prospective resource families?
Well, we receive a lot of our inquiries through our website, through Facebook, through recruitment events or walk-ins or even by telephone. So our inquiry process is utilized by our families who have made the decision to become a resource home for Cherokee Nation. Our response system for resource families is centralized with one employee responsible for taking all of our inquiries. Additional staff is utilized when that inquiry specialist is unavailable. So once an inquiry is received and preliminary questions have been answered or they fill out an application online, then that application is assigned the same day or the next working day to a resource coordinator. They schedule a home visit with the family to help the families navigate through the process. The process to get families certified, as we all know, it's timely and the paperwork can be daunting. But with a visit from a resource coordinator, the face-to-face contact seems to help them understand the process, makes the completion of paperwork easier to understand, as the worker will take the time to explain what information is needed and why. It also helps the family to know what the next step is in the process of certification. The initial home visit is completed on homes we certify in Oklahoma or adjoining states who will accept our home studies. If an inquiry is received from out of state, the family is mailed an application packet or emailed an application packet consisting mainly of identifying information and our program information. When it is an out-of-state family who's inquired, we do ask those families to become certified within their state of residence.
So you talked earlier about Facebook. So can you talk about what the role of technology, specifically your website and Facebook page, what role it plays in recruitment, inquiry, and response?
Well, Cherokee children are not just located in the state of Oklahoma. We have them all over the United States. So technology has played a really great role in our process of getting families to come on board. We have a website, and I think that address is on the slide, and it gives an overview of the Indian Child Welfare Program. Here, families can learn about our programs, and they can submit a request for additional information. With the Facebook page, we do use that for recruitment purposes, as well as to inform Facebook friends about current events that may be going on in Indian country. It's found through that Facebook portal search of Homes for Cherokee Kids. Many of our inquiries are received through our Facebook site, and we've seen Facebook to be a valuable tool in our recruitment efforts.
Great, thanks, Hetty. So can you tell us a little bit about how you work differently with relative caregivers?
Sure. Our tribal CAPS, state CAPS, and out-of-district CAPS are the ones that we receive the referral from. And they help find those relatives for placement of children, whether they're in state custody or in tribal custody. Once those relatives are located, that CAPS worker completes an assessment of the relative home. They forward that assessment and inquiry to our inquiry specialist. And when a relative home study request is received, it's assigned directly to a certification worker. They have a completion goal of 30 days to get the home study complete. During this time, they'll schedule the family for training, and if they're unable to attend the training on specific dates that have been set, we'll make alternative training arrangements. That might mean that we could meet the family within their community. We might do the training in the office, but it's going to be at their convenience. Agencies we work with to obtain background checks, they also understand that there are times when we need results back immediately, and they've provided a way for us to obtain those results. Our relative home studies fall into that category, so the turnaround time to get results back is significantly shorter. That helps us meet our deadlines.
Great. And how do you partner with the state of Oklahoma?
The Cherokee Nation has a state tribal agreement with the state of Oklahoma. This agreement covers other programs within our Cherokee Nation Indian Child Welfare Program, but the portion pertaining to Resource Family includes accepting our home studies and our training, reimbursing our families at the same rate as the state pays state homes, working cooperatively when families are duly certified for the tribe and the state, and working conjointly on referrals, just to name a few things that's in the agreement. The state also includes Cherokee Nation in work groups that they have that affect foster care issues. In the state of Oklahoma, we have there are 5 regional areas, and our land base for Cherokee Nation falls into 2 of those regions. Many of the issues that are discussed at the regional level are, well, there's really a lot of issues that are discussed, and foster care is one of those issues. The participants in the regional levels include the state tribal liaisons, state and tribal workers. Some tribal and state supervisors are also included in those regional meetings. At the regional meetings, there's just a certain period of time that's set aside just for recruitment. The state has recruiters that come to those meetings as well, and we work together and plan events together when that's possible. The tribal recruitment staff and state recruiters, they built a good relationship with one another, and they're able to share ideas and discuss ways conjointly of how they can improve efforts of recruiting families in our state. This type of collaboration, it helps both the tribes and the state to network with one another so we can all recruit Native American families. Our regional meetings occur every other month, and after the regional meetings are held, there's a quarterly tribal state work group that's comprised of management teams of the tribes and state to gain insight from the meetings that are held at the regional level. And at the regional level, if there are problems or issues that arise and can't be resolved at the regional level, when they bring it to the larger tribal state work group with the management team, then we pull our heads together and we come up with solutions. We're very solution-oriented in these groups.
Sounds like a great collaboration. Hetty, you mentioned earlier that your work with families extends outside of Oklahoma. How do you work with Cherokee families who are out of state?
Well, as I said, we've got Cherokee children in custody all over the United States. So some of the inquiries that we receive come from Cherokee families who reside in other states. Cherokee families that live out of state who want to become a foster home for the tribe must be certified with their state of residence before coming a home for our tribe. Once they're certified in their state, we then ask the family to contact us. We obtain releases in order to receive copies of the completed home studies and other necessary paperwork. Our certification staff will contact the families, they'll do an addendum, and the family is added to our registry. Once we complete that addendum, we notify our out-of-district CAPS unit of the certification of a family in whatever state we receive that inquiry from. That makes them aware of an available resource in the state of residence of that family. Our out-of-district unit works very closely with other states, and they will not use any placement without first going through that state of residence of the family.
Great, thanks. So last question, Hetty and Heidi, get ready. How do you connect your response system to your work to develop and support families?
Once a family's completed our application, their case is assigned to a resource coordinator who makes contact with the family to keep them engaged and supported through training and gathering of information or paperwork. Most inquiries are assigned the same day or within just a few days of a completed application. When a family's made the decision to join our team, we believe our job is to begin engaging them and supporting their decision immediately.
Great. Thanks, Hetty. I want to thank you for presenting. We're super appreciative of your partnership today, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Heidi, you're up. So now I'd want to introduce Heidi Rubin, who's the program manager for Michigan's Adoption Resource Exchange. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you.
Okay, so same question as everyone else got. Please tell us a little bit about your child welfare system and how your response system is structured.
Sure. So Michigan's child welfare system consists of both private and public agencies, but adoption services are primarily provided by 64 contract agencies throughout the state. Foster care is both public and private. We have 91 private foster care agencies and 83 public Department of Health and Human Service offices. There's approximately 13,000 children in Michigan's foster care system, and approximately 2,000 of them have a goal of adoption. MARE, the Michigan Adoption Resource Exchange, is widely advertised as the clearinghouse for adoption inquiries. Inquiries are received via the MARE website and our 800 number, and we receive between 100 and 200 new inquiries from families each month. Inquiries that are received are handled by MARE's adoption navigators. They are experienced adoptive parents who are part of the MARE staff. They respond to inquiries within 24 hours or the next business day via phone or email based on the family's preference. If the family doesn't indicate, we try phone first. Follow-up contacts are made every 2 weeks until the family is either approved for adoption, the family indicates they're no longer interested, or if after 3 attempts to contact there's been no response. Michigan also has a similar program for foster home licensing called the Foster Care Navigator Program. It was modeled after our adoption navigators through MARE. Although it's a separate contract from MARE and our focus is on adoptive families, the navigator model can easily be implemented for foster family recruitment, regardless of how a system is organized.
Great, thank you. So what are some of the strengths and challenges of MARE's approach?
Yeah, so the biggest strength, in my opinion, is that our navigators are experienced adoptive parents who provide a very powerful perspective from a peer. Adoption navigators are not social workers, and they're a neutral party where families can freely ask questions and express concerns. Another strength is that this model can help to take a little bit of the workload off of agencies during the recruitment process, so our staff are an extra support. Challenges, even though it's a strength that adoption navigators aren't social workers, they do require unique training and supervision because of that. Another challenge is that we don't have an entirely all-encompassing tracking system. We try our best to get information on all of the families who inquire throughout the state. However, not everyone actually talks to MARE. With all of the private agencies and the local department offices, everyone's doing their own recruitment. So we don't necessarily have a full tracking system of adoptive families, but we're close, and we're always working towards that.
Great. So you've talked about the navigator a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role of the navigators and how they work with families?
Sure. Our navigators work with primarily 2 types of families. The first are families that contact us with that beginning inquiry. So they're new to adoption, they're just beginning the home study process, or they're just in that information gathering stage. The other type of family they work with are families who are approved for adoption but are not yet matched with a child. For new families, the adoption navigator provides a realistic first-hand experience and information about the adoption process. They share their own personal challenges, frustrations, joys, and triumphs. The strength-based profiles on MARE's photo listings are a great starting point for conversations like this with the families, and it can move them from that initial inquiry or the initial view of a child's photo or video into would this look for my family? Could I do this? And then taking that next step to start. Navigators work with families after they've been approved for adoption as well. Those families, if they are waiting to be matched with a child, the navigator becomes an advocate for the family to help them find a child to be matched with. We have a family registry where we suggest matches on a monthly basis for those families and the children that are photo listed on our website. Navigators have great relationships and rapport with many workers throughout the state of Michigan. And if they suggest a match, a lot of times the workers will take a look at those and really trust their suggestion. And this has been really helpful in finding homes for some of the most difficult to place children that the agencies are working with.
So earlier, Heidi, you mentioned that adoptions are almost completely privatized in Michigan. How do you partner with the state and other private agencies around customer service issues?
Sure. We have a couple different ways that we do that. One are surveys that are available on the Mayor website. Families can complete them on any agency that does adoptions, and and the results are viewable by families as well. So that's one way. Mayor and our adoption navigator staff are part of numerous statewide and local work groups and coalitions. So we're always in contact with agencies, with state, different departments, different groups of people who are working towards the betterment of the system and the recruitment efforts that we're doing. We provide a quarterly professional provider newsletter that goes out to adoption professionals in our state. And then we have informal feedback loops. We have conversations on a constant basis with agencies, workers and supervisors and managers regarding sometimes individual cases, but oftentimes it's kind of in general, what we're hearing, if there was a concern, let's talk about it. We try to provide technical assistance and accurate information around those areas to help with consistent messaging and strengthening customer service. And we really try to take a we're all in this together approach. We want everyone to succeed. We're all working for the same mission, and so that's what we're working towards.
So, Heidi, based on your experiences with collecting and using data related to your response system, what are some considerations for systems?
Yes. So data, as the other presenters have said throughout this webinar, data is so important. It really informs your work. And so what we found is that a database system that is easily adaptable is really important. One that you can get into and make changes as things change, as we know they do in our work. If you decide you want to start tracking something new because you want to look at something different, to be able to get in and do that. And then also be able to extract the data out so that you can look at trends and look at aggregated information that will help to move your work forward.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Heidi. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I want to thank the entire panel. You all did fantastic. I'm not sure that I have a future in being a talk show host, but I'll stick to my day job and just stay a social worker. So thank you all. So the NRCDR recognizes the importance of hearing from your peers, and we appreciate our panel of presenters sharing their experiences. As we mentioned earlier, your systems may be different from those we heard from today. However, regardless of your system's size and structure, presenters shared many valuable ideas that you can take and adapt to your work for your system. So now we're going to take just a few more minutes to discuss some additional ideas from the field and key takeaways, and then we'll get to your questions. They've been coming in fast and furious here. So let's think about your response system and how it can be a tool for tackling some really tough challenges. So let's take foster parents' role in reunification as an example. The NRCDR hears that working with resource families around supporting reunification can be challenging. So how can your response system help to address this challenge? We talked about using data and the importance of clear, consistent messaging around goals and values. Reunification is the most desirable goal and the most common goal and outcome for children in out-of-home care. Systems can share data on goals and outcomes for children in care with families beginning early in the process so they understand that most children return home. For example, you could say early on that your tribe, state, or county has, for example, 60% of the children in care return home. These ongoing conversations can help them prepare for their role in supporting reunification and staff, and can let them know about the training and support that will be available to them. Birth parents who have reunified with their children and foster parents who have supported families in reunifying can serve as co-trainers for prospective parents. This can help prospective parents to develop realistic expectations about their role, about what their role will be in meeting the needs of children in care. For instance, we know a lot of families that do this, but a lot of foster parents are mentoring birth parents, which might mean that the foster parents has the birth parent over to their home to help cook dinner and bathe the child and put them to bed. We all know a lot of those foster parents doing this kind of work, but those real-life stories can help them understand the range of emotions and situations they may experience, and also deepen their understanding of birth families' feelings and their experiences. In preparation for National Foster Care Month in May, the NRCDR has created a new webpage providing strategies for recruiting, developing, and supporting foster parents who can support reunification. Additionally, National Foster Care's topic on this month is supporting reunification, or is reunification as a goal. So we encourage you to go to the National Foster Care Month website, where you'll find videos of birth parents. If you don't actually have a birth parent that can come to a training, or a foster parent that can come to a training, they've got lots of real-life stories, videos that you could use in training as a substitute. So in the beginning of the webinar, Marie mentioned that it's important for a response system to be engaging and accessible. Systems can empower diverse communities at each stage in the process by strengthening accessibility and cultural competence. Partnering with agencies that serve as a particular community can help with establishing relationships and building understanding of the community's culture and resources. So I'm going to share a couple of ideas from the field with you. We recently heard from Washington State that they have partnered with the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing to recruit more foster families from the deaf community, which has resulted in better understanding of the needs of deaf children and how to engage and support deaf resource families. The strategies that they used are highlighted on our website. One key step was educating staff on effective communication options between deaf parents and hearing staff, such as email, CapTel, which is captioned telephone, and local telephone relay services. In Washington, the relay service is promoted through the Don't Hang Up campaign that informs the community about making and receiving calls between deaf and hearing callers. So the Children's Administration improved their response system by educating staff about these services, so staff understand that they're receiving legitimate calls from deaf families and not just telemarketers. Another example about engaging Latino families is making information forms, training, and services available in Spanish. That can help with responding to and engaging Latino families. In order to do this, you might look at hiring bilingual staff, contracting with professional translators or service providers, or partnering with community organizations. Effective response goes beyond language accessibility, though, and to really understand the community's perception of the agency and foster care and adoption. An agency's messaging can help to ensure that families have accurate information, for example, letting families know if services are free. In many Latin American countries, only wealthier families can afford agency adoptions, although informal and kinship adoptions are more common. We can explain early on in the process that the agency provides subsidies to help families raise adopted children. Several ideas for overcoming organizational and cultural barriers with Latino communities are provided in the article from Latino LA at the link listed on the screen. So before we move into resources, I just want to talk about a few key takeaways from today. One is that linking recruitment, response, development, and support will positively impact each area. Sometimes a first step might be picking up the phone or bringing people together to begin to talk about how you can make those connections between different parts of the work. A second one might be that we encourage you to be creative in thinking about how you can collect data and create feedback loops. We've heard repeatedly how collecting data is a challenge in this area. But in order to use data effectively to inform your response system, you may need to collect and analyze some additional data elements. Our recommendation is to start with where you are in terms of your system. Think about what information is readily available now, and consider what you want to know longer term, as Gilbert discussed earlier. We are also hoping that you can apply some of the information you heard from our panel presenters to be really solution-focused, and that this conversation has you thinking about strategies for strengthening your system's current response system. Given your existing structure, even if you're thinking about changing your response system down the road. So now I just want to take a couple of minutes to highlight some resources that we have available on the nrcdr.org website. Both are from diligent recruitment grantees, the first being Nuestra Familia, and the second being the LA County 5 Acres video. On the next slide, you'll see a couple of additional resources about strengthening your response system using customer service concepts, and then looking at our tool, data-driven recruitment. Additionally, I just want you all to know that that Adopt U.S. Kids is currently piloting a response model called the Readies model for working with families who contact us and who are interested in becoming foster adoptive parents. So in doing so, we're really joining child welfare systems in the experience of strengthening our response system by making it more trauma-informed, data-driven, and focused on actively developing and supporting families from the beginning. So we're in the process of capturing our own lessons learned from this model and best practices in order to be able to share them with the field soon. So we're really excited about the work that's going on there. So we're now going to jump into your question and answer here. Just a second to get to the questions. All right, panel, here we go. So the first question I have is for Hetty. Hetty, is training for relative caregivers the same or different from the process and requirements for non-relative foster parents?
The training is the same. They get the same information, but we do make other arrangements if they're not able to come to our training. And since we do training that's one-on-one with a relative family, generally, the length of training that they receive is a little bit shorter simply because there's no one to do group activities with and what have you. But our ultimate goal is to get them the same information that our regular, traditional families receive. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. So the next question is for Gilbert. Thank you, Hetty. Gilbert, who is staffing the resource workers unit? Are they employees or are they foster parents?
They're employees. So the resource units are comprised of supervisor, resource workers, and a trainer and a facilitator. And they're all staff. None of them are foster parents.
Great, thank you, Gilbert. So Renee, now you're up.
Okay.
Has New Mexico seen an improvement in retention given the changes that you've made, and if so, how much improvement?
So the implementation of some of these changes is fairly recent, so measuring that has been a little bit of a challenge at this point because it is so new. But what I can say at this point is that we are seeing positives in going that way. We're retaining families longer. Because it's been within the last 6 months, it takes us a little bit, 4 to 6 months. We have we haven't really seen the first cycle go through the completion of licensure just yet due to our length of time it takes to license families. But what we are noticing is that the families are staying engaged longer. They're coming to our trainings, where we used to maybe see more drop off after they called the initial phone call to where they are now attending an information meeting and starting into their third RAF class, which is our training program. So small gains, I would say at this point, but again, it is very new. We just started this support and transition of our contractors, our navigators, and recruiters taking on this type of role.
Great. Thanks, Renee. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the wealth here. Heidi, this one's for you. So in Michigan, are the navigators independent of the 64 private adoption agencies? And if so, what is the role of the agency? Only paperwork.
So yes, the navigators are independent of the 64 private agencies. However, I'll just clarify their role a little bit. The navigators are not, they're not an added support to the families. So the agencies and their workers are still doing all of the assessments, they're doing the training, all of the things that are, typically required throughout the assessment process. Our navigators are that additional support to help keep them engaged and to keep them on track through the process to hopefully not only not have those families drop out of the assessment process, but to also keep it moving and to increase time frames.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Heidi. Hard to know if we're getting everybody's questions answered, so hopefully you are, and if not, please feel free to reach out to us to make sure that we're getting your questions answered. The next one, back to you, Renee. How many recruiters and navigators does New Mexico have compared to licensing staff?
Okay. Our state has 5 regional recruiters, so they cover a very large territory. And now with our contractors, who are navigators, we have 8 contract navigators who basically have divided the same regions as our recruiters versus the amount of licensing workers. We have 59 placement licensing positions throughout our state. That's not including supervisors. I would say there's about 18 to 19 supervisors within our state. So in comparison to our licensing, they are a very small portion and cover a lot of large territory because, as you know, New Mexico is very rural.
Great. Thanks, Renee. So the next question is for everybody. So we'll start in order of presenting. We'll start with you, Gilbert. So is there dedicated staff for recruitment, licensing, and retention? And are they the same staff or different units?
Recruitment staff, yes, there's dedicated. We actually have 20 dedicated recruiters throughout the state. Licensing is its own entity, but we work in partnership with them. So our relationship isn't quite as adversarial as usual when it comes to licensing. They're attached to us as a sister agency, so we really work in partnership with them. And as far as retention, being that, we're working under the model that retention is everyone's responsibility, so when it comes to dedicated staff, it's everybody within our system is supposed to be dedicated to it. But our resource workers have the main responsibility for the support that those families receive. But everything that happens, within our system can affect our retention efforts. So that's why it ends up being everybody's responsibility. So it can, everybody's in different units for sure.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Now I'll turn it over to you, Renee. So same question, is there dedicated staff for recruitment, licensing, and retention? Are they the same staff or different units?
Okay. They are different. Again, we have the 5 recruiters, 8 navigators right now, and then our 59 placement workers throughout our state are responsible for the licensing piece. And kind of the same as Gilbert there, retention within our agency and recruitment for that matter is everyone's business. So we are really working under that model, as well as that we have been doing a lot of internal work with our own staff to provide better customer service, to really help identify development of county-based recruitment teams so that each of our counties in our state can really assess the needs of those counties so that they can work on the recruitment and retention efforts. And so that's really our new vision and really how we're trying to handle things. But if you break it down, yes, we do have particular units. We have the recruitment unit and then our placement unit, which is responsible for licensing.
Thanks, Renee. So Hetty, now same question. Do you have staff for recruitment, licensing, and retention? Are they the same staff or different units?
It's different staff for different unit. However, we're all under one umbrella, so we do work conjointly with one another. We have 4 recruiters. We have 5 certification staff. Our retention is done by everyone within our child welfare program. It's important to keep those families engaged at every level, even once they become certified as a home. So the different CAPS unit also helps in those retention efforts with our families. If they see a need in going in to make a visit with a family and they see a need for more training, then we're going to get some training in there. But we all work together in trying to ensure that we retain our families, because that's important. If they've had a good experience, then they're going to tell others. But they are dedicated staff, and for each one of those units, but again, they work very closely together.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eddie. And I'm gonna let Heidi off the hook on this one, since she works for a private organization that's I don't want to ask her about how the state of Michigan actually works. So I'll just leave it to you 3. We've got one more question. Yeah.
Jill, real quick, I failed to mention for New Mexico, as part of the retention piece, is also we have what we call placement specialists, who are responsible for really providing post-placement services as there's a threat of a possible disruption, to really try to put in some support services to our families so that they can maintain the placement so that children aren't disrupted.
Great, thanks. And that actually answered one of the remaining questions that I didn't think we were going to get to. So the last question, Gilbert, is for you. So how does the core training, the foster parent training, fit into your time frame?
Well, the trainings are done in monthly sessions. So we use Pride as our training that we follow. So we do 9 sessions over a 30-day period, where we do 4 full-day sessions on the week, like on a Saturday. And so families during the 90-day process, it's like depending on when they start at the next available class. So within that 90-day process, they should be captured within the first 60 days. They should be going to training.
Thank you, Gilbert.
So
I just want to, again, thank all of our presenters today. We know the importance of everyone being able to hear from their peers on what's working and what's not working. So thank you all again. I want to thank you all for participating in today's webinar. We would really appreciate it if you'd fill out the evaluation form that you'll see on your computer screen when the presentation ends. We very much value your feedback and will use it to help inform future webinars. And then today's webinar will be archived and available on the NRCDR website. Everyone will receive a follow-up email from us when the archive is available. So thank you again to our participants and also to our presenters for your time today. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to your participation in future NRCDR events. Thank you.